Andrew Pearce, we're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate.
And 5 times the fun.
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end.
I can't
Britain's
wink,
listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's 11 o'clock, you're with GB News, and coming up, headliners first. Let's bring you the latest news headlines. And our top story tonight, the White House says the US president is very much looking forward to visiting Northern Ireland, despite the recent violence. Politicians across Northern Ireland condemned the attacks on police in Londonderry today. Missiles, including petrol bombs, were thrown at a PSNI car during a dissident Republican march. It follows warnings of possible attacks on officers today, raising the terror threats in the region. And the violence comes ahead of Rishi Sunak's visit to Belfast tomorrow, when he'll be hosting Joe Biden to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. Now, in the United States, the man who shot 4 colleagues dead in the state of Kentucky has been identified as 23-year-old Connor Sturgeon. In the attack, which took place at a bank in Louisville. Police say the gunman joined the bank as a full-time employee last year. The FBI joined local law enforcement officers and later confirmed the gunman had been shot dead at the scene. A father whose wife and 2 daughters were killed in a West Bank attack has mourned that his family of 7 has now been reduced to 4. 2 British-Israeli sisters, Maya and Rina, who were 20 and 15 years old, were killed when their car was targeted by a suspected Palestinian gunman on Friday. Their mother, Lucy D., who was travelling with her daughters, was airlifted to hospital but died from her injuries earlier on today. Israeli forces are still trying to track down the gunman. Here, thousands of junior doctors will strike for the next 4 days in what's being described as the most disruptive industrial action in NHS history. Members of the British Medical Association will walk out for 96 hours from tomorrow. They're asking for a 35% pay rise to help resolve the recruitment and retention crisis. NHS England says emergency care will be prioritised during the strike, warning up to 350,000 appointments could be cancelled. And heavy rain with gales of up to 60 miles an hour is forecast over the next 2 days, waving goodbye to all that Easter sunshine. A yellow weather warning for wind covering the west coast and Northern Ireland is in place for 12 hours from 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And identical Met Office warnings in place for South West England and South Wales on Wednesday. And the Environment Agency, meanwhile, has issued several flood alerts across southern England, where flooding, they say, is possible. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. You're with GB News. Time now for headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans and I'm joined tonight by the hugely talented Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you both?
I am all right. I wasn't doing that well the other night.
Just tonight. I just need to know about it.
Oh, just tonight. I'm just saying, relative. I'm not doing that.
Story.
I'm not doing that great. I'm a miserableist, but I'm doing better than I was doing the other night.
Well, you can only compare yourself to your previous best, can't you? That's the only way to continue to thrive in the world. You, Nick?
No, I'm loving it, loving life, smashing it.
Yeah, you are smashing it, aren't you? You've been giving me some detailed statistical breakdowns of that. We'll come
That was
back.
just to freak you out.
Let's take a quick look at Tuesday's front pages. We kick off with the Daily Mail, as always, and 19 terror suspects among Channel arrivals. The Daily Telegraph, or just the Telegraph these days, Biden will push to unite all Stormont parties, including white bunnies. The Guardian, junior doctor strikes could run until the general election. And the Times also has the NHS strike, which will cause a month of disruption, which doesn't preclude the possibility of a further 18 months. The Express, don't get ill. Doctors' strike going to hurt. The Star has Dope Me Up, Scotty. That's about not extraterrestrial, but Space Lab medical procedures. Anyway, we might be covering that one if we have time. Those are your front pages. So before we get on to the Breaking Bad in space, we start with The Guardian and more junior doctor strikes, Lewis.
Well, this is one of those stories that goes on and on and on. Basically, the junior doctors, who I don't know if people care that they're not there because they're not the senior doctors. I mean, why would anybody... How can you respect any group of people that care and want to be called junior? And junior anything. You don't want to be a pilot, your plane, to be this is your junior pilot. No, you want your full-on pilot. Anyway.
Do you think maybe if they change the names, that would maybe, instead of giving them the 35% pay rise they want, do you think if they just upgraded them to regular doctors?
I think it would help. Yeah. It would help a lot. I think every time that they got to say you're a junior doctor, and they got to sit there and explain what it means to be a junior doctor, at least to some foreigner like me. I don't want to... I hate to talk about these people because they've been unbelievable to me. I get better service than anyone else on the NHS. I'm basically made part of the family at King's College.
You're there a lot.
Yeah. I am there a lot. But the truth is, in Israel, the doctors went on strike and people lived. If you remember correctly, during the COVID, no one could get an appointment for like 2 years. And did that many people die?
We think medicine might be a huge scam, the entire proposition that people can get.
He's a medicine truther.
Do you think so too?
Yeah, I suspect, healthy diet is the thing.
It is. We're so focused on the treatment afterwards rather than taking care of people.
What do you think, Nick? 35% does seem a bit optimistic, doesn't it?
That's mad, isn't it, to just go in and ask for that? I mean, it's a sort of Trumpian tactic, isn't it? Out of the deal, that's my ridiculous first offer, deal with it. Yeah, because I heard that a 1% pay rise across the NHS would cost $1 billion. So imagine a 35% bankrupt the entire country.
It does seem to me that the junior doctors, I mean, it's been a long-standing proposition, isn't it, that they are a particularly underpaid cohort, and that, of course, you need to encourage people in at that level, and then hopefully they get a bit of momentum and they just carry on.
I do sympathise, and you always feel that sort of weird guilt of, like, you can't really attack the doctors too much because then you're there the next day and they say, I saw you on headliners, you know, and you're a bit worried.
But, I mean, Lewis, I mean, I do agree. I have, in the last few weeks, found myself getting into a little bit of a whirlpool. You can if you're not careful.
Yeah.
You're fine, and then one thing goes wrong and you get some medication. And then something else goes wrong and you get a bit of medication, and those two combine to create a third thing. Yeah. And before you know it, it's like the creepers growing around your ankles. It's best not to get involved.
Well, it's best for people who are watching out there. Look at how great I look. OK? I didn't always look this good. You can Google me. I was disgustingly unattractive.
You can Google it. The images are disgusting.
This is the after photo you're looking at, guys. And you just do it just by eating meat. And
basically, by eating meat, a low-carb diet. I didn't invent the whole thing, but that's what we need to do. Anyway, the point is, can I just say this? These doctors, by whipping people into a frenzy over COVID, basically caused the inflation.
That is possibly true. That is there is an element of truth to that. I'm going to say that whipping, not all of them, but there was an element of truth to the NHS kind of...
Yeah, we were applauding. Meanwhile, everything's becoming more...
Anyway, the Times, Nick, they've got obviously the same main front page.
Yes, they've got the NHS strike, of course. They've got a picture of Joe Biden with a bunny for some reason. Then they've got Met Chief boosted in call for new powers. And this is about Samart Rowley. And what he wants to do is give senior officers, talking about senior and junior, the power to sack police people, which is what they used to do.
Yep.
And it was a simpler system, simpler time, Simon. They said people were worried it was secretive and potentially self-serving. Well, of course it was, it's the police. But what the problem is, they brought in these legal experts, and they're much more sort of touchy-feely, and they didn't sack enough people. So that was a big problem. And so now they want to go back to how they used to do it and just get rid of the bad eggs. And although the quite strange fact here that they
it back into the eggs there with the Easter Bunny.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
it's quite strange that they found that white officers were nearly twice as likely to be sacked. I don't know what to make of that. I was on board with this until it targeted my people. I'm not sure what to say. But yeah, it's one of these get tough and sort out the policing. I mean, it can't be worse than what's been happening, really, with all the people that have been slipping through the net.
Well, funny enough, as well, it does sound a little bit like what a lot of people would say about hospitals, which is that they used to be a lot better when there was a lot more discipline on the wards, that matron was feared, and that there was more immediate sanctions could be brought to bear by senior staff. Yeah,
It can be. It may not be worse, but it can be worse. Is you have a different group of people who are more high-level type baddies. And we have to be honest. The police do a tremendous job. We need the police. But the kind of person that goes into the police can often, I'm not saying all the time, be a bit dodgy. And the higher level they are, the dodgier they could be. And so you're going to let the most dodgy people be in charge.
You're talking about the American police force. Our police are a completely different sort of proposition from that. We have the Daily Telegraph, Lewis.
This is my newspaper.
Yeah. Same Biden and Bunny story on the front, which incidentally I think we're going to be doing later, aren't we? His intention to run, but
yeah. Well, this is about him, what he's doing, which is tomorrow he's coming into Northern Ireland for the 25th anniversary of the breakout of peace by his predecessor Bill Clinton. And he's bringing together all the Northern Irish parties back in like what they did back in the day. They all had a good hand around. And he's not going to be coming to the Queen to see King Charles, but he's willing to come to Ireland.
it's interesting that I know some people on this channel have created a bit of a fuss about it, but apparently it's hardly ever been the case. I don't know if it's ever been the case that a sitting American president attends a coronation.
Well, the last one was 1952, and Eisenhower did not go to Queen Elizabeth's one, so it's not like
it's not like it's a real snub.
But excuse me, it doesn't happen all the time.
But we do know for a fact, don't we? I mean, there's no secret about it, Nick, that Biden is heavily invested emotionally in the Irish question.
Well, yeah, many Americans think they're Irish. We know this. But, yeah, this idea that Biden's going to come over and solve, Irish problems that have been intractable over, generations. I mean, the guy can't walk upstairs. So I'm a little bit cynical. Obviously, it's symbolic. The US president comes over. But when it's this 8-year-old guy, says he's going to push to unite all Stormont parties, I sort of wonder if he can probably barely push out a bowel movement, can he? Is that ageist?
Yes, it is.
I feel bad about that.
Is.
But, I assume his presence there lends a legitimacy to their involvement in the talk. Because I suppose if you meet all 5 of them, you kind of go, you're all important. No party left behind. It's that kind
It would if he was a more authoritative president. But does it really with Biden? I guess maybe he is still the president.
Yeah, he's the president. He means something. Can I point something out very interesting that I did not know? That, yes, there's a huge number of people in America who claim to have Irish roots, OK? Green in Ireland. But the truth is that 60% of those people come from Northern Ireland and have Protestant background.
Right.
OK? So people always think, they're all the Irish Americans are all Catholics. But they're not.
It is an interesting thing about the American psychology, isn't it, is that they like to support underdogs like that. They like to think that they're there for the rebels against the English. Whereas, in fact, of course, in terms of their own ongoing battles,
at the present time,
America is number one, more military might than the rest of the world combined and so on. It's a oddly...
It goes back to 1776. It's still in their blood.
Yeah, the spirit of 76. I remember him. He was a cartoon with me. Anyway... Do you remember him, the Spirit of 76?
No,
he was a ghost.
We're both too young.
He was a ghost, possibly, and he was a ghost called the Spirit. I never understood it.
Was that here in this country?
It was a Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
No one else has heard of this, Lewis. Don't worry.
Please tweet people and let me know. I'm not making it up. Daily Star, finally, to round up our front pages. NASA's bringing a new meaning to the phrase spaced out, Nick.
Yeah, dope me up, Scotty. So meds will save lives of astronauts on years-long trips to the stars. And what this is, they'll be able to make their own drugs, and the Daily Star is calling it in Breaking Bad-style labs. It may not be exactly like... They may not be messed up when you're out in the spaceship, but this is to sort of protect against key space travel hazards, which include radiation sickness, bone damage, kidney stones, and also hurtling to the Earth in a blazing fireball. They're going to sort of... They're going to be making... I made one of them up. They're going to be making drugs that strengthen bones and things like that while they're up there, because you're out there so long.
You want your Bunsen burner to have a magnetic base, I assume, or something like that, wouldn't you?
It didn't mention that in the piece.
Around.
Well, this is just one more example of how the pharmaceutical industry is trying to convince everybody just that drugs are the answer.
Well, I don't know.
Final frontier for Big Pharma is space.
Yeah.
It's not Big Pharma, though, is it? It's do your own. It's like in the old days, in the 70s, every dad worth his salt, including mine, would make his own wine at home.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you can boost it up a little bit.
Small pharma.
But it says how important wine is in that situation, and this is saying how important drugs are. You do not need drugs. You need a decent meal.
Not good
Eat
for
meat.
kidney stones, anyway.
No.
So I do know a bit about that one. That's it for part one. Coming up, we cover the Dalai Lama controversy, Biden's 2024 run, and Elon Musk defends his comments on the BBC on GB News. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel. Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
we've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans. I'm joined by Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon. So, Lewis, let's kick off this section somewhat unusually with the Daily Star and even more unusually with the Dalai Lama's leaked sex tape.
Yes. Well, you know something, I was looking at this thing, and it creeped me out. And if it creeped me out, I think it's probably proper creepy. And you can't make a joke because I don't. It's that the Dalai Lama, he regrets asking a young boy to, quote, suck my tongue in an odd viral clip. I don't know when this happened. But he's 87 years old and he's meeting some 11-year-old. And I guess he's a celebrity. I don't know whether the guy's ever been married. But he approached this 11-year-old kid to
approached him, or he was like the boy approached him.
Something like that.
I mean, I'm not saying he was asking for it. I'm just saying he wasn't kind of like lurking in a fairground or something.
But he stuck his face right in the kid's face, and the kid didn't back away. And then he said, "Suck my tongue." I can't decide on this one, and I have an opinion on everything.
Yeah. But the incredible coincidence is that Lewis did the same thing in The Office, and he only kept his job because, you know, his people run the media. But the point is, this was creepy. I absolutely agree. And there's apparently, it says here, some news refers to Tibetan culture about showing tongue, which is weird enough on its own. But they're even saying whatever showing tongue is, and I don't know.
That isn't.
Is that this isn't that? This is sucking a tongue, which is bizarre. And I mean, is he just senile, or is it really sinister?
Well, at 87, I mean, and obviously he's had quite the life, you know, living in exile throughout that time. He's remained extraordinarily poised. Most of his pronouncements are universally agreed to have brought, you know, elevated the prospect of peace around the world. Occasionally, he's been surprisingly nationalistic in certain aspects of European culture and so on, which we've, you know, probably among us, we're quite glad of that support. This is like a real outlier, you know. He doesn't have any history of behaving like this, and I can't.
Unlike Biden.
I can't help wondering if it is a slight, you know, because there is a weird thing that happens as you get older. It's not necessarily dementia, but sometimes, in the same way that people get older, they make occasionally inappropriate remarks of one kind or another. It's just like certain kind of filters in the brain to stop kicking in quite as well. Which is not to say he's been suppressing the desire to have a small boy suck his tongue with these years. He has been suppressing mischievous sense of humour, knowing that would be an inappropriate
thing to say. The non-tongue sucking synapses have failed.
Yeah.
And he just now sucks tongues at random.
I'm just saying, you start making inappropriate little jokes, you know. I met
escalates.
My wife's grandmother, when she was about 90, used to say the most extraordinarily rude things around the Christmas dinner table. And I mean, apparently she'd always been a little bit kind of strong, you know, her sense of humour, but they just come out with this.
That's what Henry Miller said, the great author of Tropic of Cancer, Henry Miller. He said, as we get older, we just lose it. We stop caring after a point. Because what can they do? What are they going to do to the guy? Are they going to fire him?
He also said, I will widen her shores.
That's a good question. He was great, Henry Miller, but can you be fired from being the Dalai Lama?
Very good point. I don't think you can. I think it's an office for life. Yeah.
So he's just abusing the office. He's like, see if you can fire me. It's a spiritual appointment.
Yeah.
Well, they could do something.
Where they're going to find the next one.
They got rid of that Pope. Didn't they get rid of was it Pope Francis? Was it Pope Francis? One of the popes they got rid of because they just said he's a bit odd.
Yeah.
And they got rid of King Edward.
Ratzinger.
They got King Edward.
Ratzinger got a bad rep.
They can get rid of people.
There's always a way. Nick.
Hello.
Guardian has news of Biden limbering up for a session on the treadmill. I would imagine that's the only possible reading of this that makes sense.
Yes, Biden says, I plan on running in 2024, but no formal announcement yet. And what he said was, he was on a show and he said, I plan on running, Al, but we're not prepared to announce it yet. I mean, to the layman, that sort of is an announcement, but it's not a formal announcement. It just obviously is. And indeed, who else could there be? You know, the awful Kamala Harris or the awful Gavin Newsom. There is no one. They don't have anyone, so they have to go with this 80-year-old guy who's been a total failure, but they've got no one else. But the good news is, of course, Simon, they can always just rig the election. Not that such things ever happen, but I'm saying they could,
the beauty of postal votes, Nick.
Yeah. Well, it
gives them plenty of time to work out exactly how many they need and where.
Well, let's be honest, Trump or DeSantis would smash them if it's a fair election. But aside from even out-and-out tampering...
that for a fact.
Well, you've also got ballot harvesting and you've got postal votes. You've got techniques that are within the law, kind of, haven't you? And that's where it's going to be played out.
And I have no very strong view about the election being rigged, but except, you know, that the evidence suggests otherwise. But the fact is, in both previous elections, Trump has been a massive outsider. The one that he won and the one that Biden won, Trump was going into as an outsider on the polling. It was like 98% over as far as they were concerned when he beat Hillary. And also the betting was entirely with Trump on the day until the last minute. You know, what I'm saying is if he goes into the next one already in the lead, according to the polls, that really does suggest something could, you know, quite humiliating could happen.
It could, but I don't think. I think, not that Trump is less loved, but I think the democratic belief system, which most people that we know find to be a bit odd, is actually more favored in the entire country than the Republican system.
Well, it'll be interesting. I do think it'll be interesting to see if he keeps Kamala, because she's been more unpopular than him. Obviously, she's young and fit, but in this second term, the chances of her actually having to become president would be significant. People would know they were voting for that.
She does well in the black female demographic. It's pretty much the only reason they keep her on, I think. But yeah, the election will come down to the same few swing states as always, won't it? And the same questionable counts as always.
I don't think so, no. I think
what will it come down to then?
You think it's going to win?
It's going to come down. The fact is that the Democrats are holding a winner. It seems shocking to me, but I think people, they like this whole trans business, believe it or not. I don't.
Hey, listen, the last few years haven't been, you know, we've observed little scandals here and there, but he has had a pretty good run. I'm not saying Biden, Biden personally, I think, is too old. I just think better to have a 60-year-old man there, or woman.
Yeah.
But I do think his administration has been reasonably successful.
Has it?
Well, the flare-ups of the trans...
World War,
but the
war in Europe.
inflation was a blip, and that did come out of COVID, and we have got that in this country as well. So I don't think you can necessarily, you know, tally those things together. I do think there is a little bit of, I do think the military-industrial complex is back up and running. You know, that was something that we had a break from with Trump.
And they're indicting former presidents. I think he's the worst president of all time without question. How do you think he's done well? Yeah, I also think the administration is just entirely corrupt and misusing intelligence, misusing lawfare. But yeah, that's my...
you're thinking reasonably, you know, and I'm with you.
Simon's a big lefty.
I am with you.
The viewers are with me.
Well, I don't know what I am, but I'm telling you, the people like Joe Biden.
They don't.
They like Joe Biden.
They may hate Trump.
But you know what? They may think he's dim and he is got Alzheimer's and all that stuff, but they like where the country is under him. They think that the Republicans are evil. And they don't want to go back.
There are plenty of Americans who quite like the fact that Russia is being beaten in a war that they don't actually have to personally go off and fight. I mean, it's kind of the best of both worlds for them. But anyway, Lewis, in not entirely unrelated news, The Times has good prospects for treating Alzheimer's.
Yeah, well, this is one of those stories. It says Alzheimer's treatment's ready by 2040, which isn't that far away, which is, like, shocking. It says Julie Williams, a professor who studied the disease for 30 years in Cardiff University at the UK Dementia Institute, has said they're going to find something because they've already identified 92 genes that increase the risk of Alzheimer's. Now, what makes this story so absolutely ridiculous and what makes it a non-story,
there it is,
a complete non-story, is that we've had these 92 genes for thousands of years, but just so happens in the last 30, 40, 50 years, the rate of Alzheimer's has gone through the roof. Yet they're trying to work on these genes. What they want to do is they just are looking for more money, for more drugs. It's a press release. This thing is complete rubbish.
Wow.
Okay?
Didn't see that coming. I knew something would be a non-story, but I didn't know it would be that one. Well, it's quite interesting. I mean, this person, Julie Williams, told the BBC she's learnt more in the last 7 years than she did in the previous 20. But that could also be Alzheimer's, of course. It did strike me. But I like this bit as well. It says, we know that defective genes changing the way immune cells work. They're called... Anyway, there's these microglia. And apparently they're like bin lorries of the brain clearing away what they see as rubbish, but they may be less efficient at clearing genuine rubbish and mistakenly kill off healthy brain cells. So they're kind of like Haringey Council. They take away the wrong stuff, and that's apparently the science of it. That's my very broad understanding.
And that is actually...
And it's a non-story, OK?
That is kind of like what a lot of disease and poor health amounts to, is the body's own immune system getting overly enthusiastic, isn't it? A lot of things like arthritis are to do with that. You know, steroids basically are introduced as a medicine to stop, to calm down the municipal services.
And Simon, where does it come from?
What, steroids?
Where does it come from? It comes from having a plant-based diet of toxic foods, of seed oils, of crushed grains, of sugars that are causing this thing.
I said vegetables as a joke. That was his real answer.
No, the answer is vegetables. Why?
No, he's saying vegetables is causing the...
Can I just say one positive of the story? They're claiming by 2040 they'll be able to use a range of treatments, and one of them will solve this. They don't know which. So that is actually a positive, if you believe the story, which you...
No, it won't solve it. It will not solve it.
I think the main reason we got lots more people having Alzheimer's is people are just living a lot longer.
I knew you were going to say that,
Is it
and
not?
that is, I'm going to look you straight in the face. Don't ever, ever say that again. It has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
People aren't living much longer than they used to be living. They're just being kept alive in an old age home until the government decides to kill them by giving them whatever that drug was.
You're going to be paying your one-man Ofsted fine. The Ofcom, rather. The Daily Mail plainly enjoying this next story. Elon Musk has categorised the BBC as government-funded media.
Yeah, it's absolute bant. I mean, we covered it last night. So, yeah, Elon Musk defends labelling BBC government-funded media on Twitter, saying all organisations have bias. So since we covered it last night, the only real update is that he's emailed and said we're aiming for maximum transparency and accuracy, linking ownership and source of funds probably makes sense. So he's emailed the BBC and said that organisations should be self-aware, not falsely claim they're absent of bias. But he does say the BBC is one of the least biased, so to be very fair. But I think it's all a bit of a Musk flex. He called NPR state-affiliated media, then he reduced it to government-funded media. He took away the New York Times' verification, which was lols, and now he's done this with the BBC. And I think he wants to humiliate legacy media, and let's face it, they kind of deserve it.
He wants... I mean, his big thing is that everyone should pay to play.
That's the other thing. He wants money.
But it is definitely quite, as you say, it is funny. Charles Moore on the front page of The Telegraph, I noticed in the small print down the bottom, said that, I'm going to find this and make sure I quote him, Musk should classify the BBC as a state church. Rather than media, which is quite amusing.
That is funny. But you know what? He's totally right. And I tell you something, this is, of all the stories we've ever covered, this is the only real story. This is...
Finally.
I know people say, well, oh, no, it's the BBC, and people have a choice to pay the BBC, which we do have a choice to pay the BBC. We don't have to pay it, but we also might not want to be in prison.
The thing about the BBC is it isn't comparable to Russian or Chinese media in terms of how closely it follows the government line. But it is worth mentioning, you know, to people around the world, you know, where it comes from, where its funding is, because, as he says, all media organisations are biased in their own way, and you have to accept that the funding is probably something to do with that. Yeah, well, I said he should call it blob-affiliated media, because really it hates the actual Conservative government, doesn't it? But it's the deep state media. The blobby broadcasting company, corporation. Anyway, that's part two in the bag. Coming up, we have a US pensioner charged with bank robbery for the third time. We have Harry Potter fans vowing to boycott the new HBO TV series. And we have the call to ban phones for under 16s. All good programmes. Stay tuned.
I joined
is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News. the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to...
Welcome back to Headliner. So, Nick, we have a story in the Express now that could hardly have been more perfectly judged to anger up this show's audience.
Yes, well, you described it in the break as Suella Braverman and the Gollywogs, which I said was my favourite band, but actually you said Suella and the Gollywogs. But anyway, let's get on with this. So Suella Braverman slams police for sending 6 officers to seize Gollywog dolls from pubs. So this was in Grays in Essex, and they sent 6 officers to pick up 15 dolls. That's one officer, that's 2.5 dolls per officer. So this is the way we're using our resources in this country. Now, these were Gollywog dolls. I wouldn't have them in my pub, but is it the best use of resources? And what happened was Suella did the usual thing of screaming into the wind and saying, why on earth are we doing this, but not actually being able to affect any departments. And so it just happened anyway. And they were seized under a suspected hate crime. And a particularly ridiculous bit is that it said the police took them away, and it says... Police said, as he is the licensee, they need to interview him, and they've taken away his dolls in the interim. How infantilised are we as a culture? How authoritarian? We're going to take away your dolls, Lewis. This sounds clown world stuff, isn't it?
It's almost impossible to satirise it, isn't it? Because it says 6 police officers, as you say. It's even if there were, like, boxes of dolls. It's just ridiculous. Absurd. How can they possibly justify that? You would only take 6 if you expected some sort of
resistance,
physical, if not to say,
on the dolls.
Resistance.
If they're like Chucky dolls, they could resist.
What do you think, Lewis? I mean, it's...
I don't know.
We should acknowledge it could be an inflammatory... I don't know. I mean, is it like...
I would say, I don't know. I didn't live in this country when there was such a thing as Gollywog dolls. And I don't understand the importance of it, but I have heard about it. And it sounds like you're having, like, Nazi memorabilia up in a pub in maybe a Jewish area or something where Jews could walk anywhere. Yeah. We could. So it's not nice. It's not nice. But should it be made... Is it against the law to have Gollywog?
It wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't say... I get what you're saying, but I wouldn't say it was remotely comparable to Nazi memorabilia for this reason. Although, to be honest, if you want to collect Nazi memorabilia, as long as you make clear that it is just like a collection of war memorabilia, it depends how you view it. If you kind of, like, bow to it at the end of the...
Well, are they bowing to the Gollywog?
I think... I mean, I grew up with a Gollywog, but always feeling less comfortable with it. I recognise my parents were a bit sad when it came off. It was Robinson's marmalade, wasn't it? Yeah. Because we didn't have... and I'm not, like, getting into this deeply, but we didn't have slavery, we didn't have minstrels, we didn't have Jim Crow. So it was quite denatured. It was like deracinated. It was just an image of what was a quite comical, very smiley face that you didn't kind of go, oh, that's a sort of playful mockery of the supposedly simple-minded, black children who live in... Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, we had no idea.
We had no idea. It was just a thing, like Andy Pandy was a kind of puppet marionette. But I think at this point you have to recognise that, we are all living in a global village.
Especially,
it's almost impossible
especially if you put it in a public place where a black person could walk in and see that and think, maybe I'm not welcome.
Well, that's why I said it would not be in my pub. But the separate, obviously offensive in that sense. But the question was, do we need 6 police officers to... Why couldn't one guy just come in if we had to do it and just round them up?
Yeah.
And,
or in fact, just get somebody to go in and smash the window. Just kind of like kick off about it. That would probably solve it overnight, wouldn't it?
Saying that, people might be shouting at me, some viewers, because as we said, is it his right to have them in there even if it is offensive?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pub, but you could say it's a public place. I would say as a libertarian,
it's a business.
He could have it, but he's kind of be stupid because black people wouldn't want to go in there, and people who had friends who were black people or cared about black people, which is everybody nowadays, don't
You
want
never
to
know,
go
though.
in.
That it is conceivable, again, we must round this up, but it is conceivable that people who've grown up and live in Grays in Essex who understand that it's part of the culture there and that it isn't meant with a hostile intent, so maybe they can take it.
And let's be honest, the person who complained was almost certainly a white woman.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Lewis, over to The Guardian now. For American news, it seems that Bonnie Parker is still alive and well. No sign of Clyde Barrett.
Well, I guess this made news because a U.S. woman, 78 years old, which is even older than I am, charged with bank robbery for a third time, and her name is Bonnie Gooch, and she was been jailed on £25,000 for stealing from a Pleasant Hill, Kansas City. It's a town in Kansas, which is in Missouri, which I always think of Kansas City as being in Kansas, but it's in Missouri.
OK.
And anyway, I guess it's just an indicator of how the economy is going so bad in the country that they need people who 78-year-old women are willing to.
She's an old drunk, isn't she?
But what's good about it is, I tell you why this is a better time to be arrested, is because Louis Schaefer has come out with a brand new calendar. I've got a.
We're running late, I'm afraid.
I've got a 2023 calendar. This is just the front cover of it. It shows me being very fit and handsome with meat, and it says comedian, troublemaker, and housewife. That's what I go by.
Cancel culture news now, Nick. Sorry, Lewis, we really don't have time. Cancel culture news in the Mail, and the world's most grievance-nurturing fan base are at it again.
Yeah, this is Harry Potter fans vow to boycott HBO TV series over J.K. Rowling's views on trans debate. It's the same story again and again. I mean, I have no interest in Harry Potter, but I would like to see a reality show of J.K. Rowling and the vicissitudes of her being cancelled and uncancelled just about every day. There's not much more to say, really. There's a new TV series. People are complaining again because they're pathetic.
Lewis, Daily Mail, news story that is going to have a lot of kids scrolling over with a brief dismissive laugh.
Well, this is ban phones for all under 16s. Campaigners demand. Well, who is this campaigner? This is another non-news story because this group, Us for Them, it's like probably a made-up group, and they just sent out a press release, and they just said, we want to get into the news about...
Well, they got Catherine Burblesing, who's been on this channel, who has got some track record of knowing what helps kids, especially kids from a not too promising start, actually achieve at school and so on. And she agrees that no child under 16 should have access to a smartphone.
Do you know what? They used to say that about watching TV was dangerous back in our day, in the days before our day. They used to say radio, they're listening to radio, who knows what they're doing. Rock and roll is bad. It's just these people want things to be illegal. And they want everything to be illegal. I agree with you. I don't think kids should have mobile phones. But it shouldn't be up to this state to break into somebody's pub and take away their gollywogs.
So what do you think, Nick?
That was a time.
Well, it was clever. I think, the fact that Catherine Burblesing is saying it makes me think she's probably right because she runs a brilliant school and she tends to know what she's talking about. But on the other hand, can we put phones back now we have them? It's kind of like an evil can we put like veganism? It was never going to go back. And also, perhaps there's an argument you're robbing robbing kids of skills they'll need in the future economy. They need to be able to work phones.
Well, that is certainly how the kids present it. When we were anxious about our kids having smartphones or having screen time, they were absolutely like, you will essentially mark us out as social exiles. We will be unable to communicate. We will be unable to build friendship groups.
Yeah.
Or we won't know
build
what
YouTube channels.
are about. Yeah, exactly. Build our personal brand.
Yeah. So it's just
the only thing I would say from Burblesing's point of view is I do think it's quite good that at least she gives maybe some degree of support to any parent that is thinking, I am going to put my foot down over this. I don't want my kids to have a phone, or at least not at 8 or at 12, maybe 14, not 16, whatever. But it's good to at least hear somebody who knows what they're talking about raising an alarm. If you're a parent who is determined to go your own way, it can be encouraging.
Or maybe the schools, they have the kid for 5 or 6 hours. They just say you can't use the phones during school hours.
Well, I think most schools try and do that. Guardian now and mental health sick days are up over a third, Nick.
Yeah, mental health sick days taken by civil servants rise 38% in 1 year. Whitehall civil servants took a record 771,433 days of sick leave last year, and it's just escalating and going crazy.
That is insane.
I know.
How much again?
771,443. And it went up from, last year it was 558,125. So it's going way, way up. And they're blaming COVID, of course. Staff cuts, low pay, long hours, poor morale. I mean, we're not complaining about any of those. The thing is, this is it. I mean, let's be honest, mental health is real. We've got this godless culture. We've got this sort of endless cortisol of the fear-mongering media. We've got, we've got the hedonic treadmill of social media. We've got the lack of meaning. Marriages collapse, relationships have collapsed. And I've had my share of mental health problems, but, crucially, you still come to work. I mean, if you didn't come to work with mental health problems, you wouldn't be able to run a show with comedians. I mean, it's over straight away.
To be honest, Freud, who was, maybe not right about everything, but he said work is one of the two things that make sense of life, right? It's where you go to get away from your mental health problems. I mean, I certainly feel that way about it.
Freud
said that, yeah.
Oh, Freud. Not Fred. Yeah, people are mentally ill.
There are
right
exceptions. There are some days when I come to work and my mental health declines rapidly, sometimes precipitously.
Working with Lewis,
but by and large.
But at the end of the day, I think Nick is right. It has to do with a godless world that we live in. It's the death of love. There's no love, there's no family. It has to do with the fact that you can take a day off for mental health now. You don't have to produce any evidence of a wound and you just get full pay and you stay at home. At the end of the day, only 3.2 days per employee was taken off. So it's not like a huge amount of mental health days.
It's a significant
it is,
insight
but
into
it's only
the civil service itself. It is true.
Days.
And comedians talk about it, and I have friends. I cannot remember the last time I took a single day sick for anything, including gout. I performed 3 2-hour shows on a stool a week ago because I could barely hobble onto the stage.
Because you didn't listen to me. I told you exactly what you need to do with gout.
By the way,
is that you need to lower your blood sugar levels. You need it's caused by fructose.
Coming up, we have
fructose,
spying on
alcohol,
traffic lights that turn red when you speed, and
to
Australia's most inbred family. You won't want to miss it. See you in a minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So, welcome back for our final section. We kick off, Lewis, with court news in the Daily Mail, and non-binary sensitivities are being respected by judges now, so help me God.
Well, I don't think this is a problem. because the judge asked murder trial jury if it's okay to call them ladies and gentlemen. After he called them ladies and gentlemen, and this judge, Stephen John Arthur Ayer, and he said if you'd like to, he asked the jury who was doing a thankless job, do you want to be called ladies and gentlemen? I don't know whether you've ever been to court, but the judge, the more he's going to screw you, the more he's nicer to you.
Okay.
And
he's
so,
talking to the jury now. So.
He's talking to the jury, but at a trial, these guys are unbelievably nice.
It's not a big deal, I suppose.
It's not a big deal.
Well, he's trying to be courteous ostensibly, but the danger is that you give ground to sort of disingenuous ideologues, which we've done in the culture, because there only is really ladies and gentlemen, so you don't really need to say, is anyone offended by that? And if you're a judge, you should lead the society, really, not just pander to this nonsense. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. It's like that is just like putting your pronouns in the bio, isn't it? It becomes a slightly passive-aggressive thing, and before you know it, that sort of elevates itself above the Bible as being the oath taker.
But talking about passive-aggressive, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, who knows if they're ladies? We're in Britain. Very few of them.
It is quite archaic as well. It's
or
funny, actually.
Gentlemen.
Well, the picture of him in the paper as well, the actual picture of him standing there, and he had these sort of lacy cuffs, you know, because he's a judge, and he kind of looked a little bit trans in his own way anyway.
Yeah.
There are things to be played with there. That's what I find, so I'm not going to get stuck in it, but that is what I find slightly kind of infuriating about the whole current state of the trans debate, is it's kind of robbed it of all its mystery and magic, hasn't it? They used to be slightly sort of magical creatures.
They were magical. Especially
now they're demanding this.
It's like we've seen the leprechaun. There he is.
Yeah, but the most important thing is the reveal. That was the magic. That was the magic. It's like, oh, wow, a little bonus there. Oh, she's wearing a dress and...
The Times now, and the French tricolour has been adapted to slow down rural speedsters, by the sound of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's French traffic lights that turn red if you speed. If you go at the correct speed that the communist government wants you to, then you're allowed to go through. And
you get a green wave.
Green wave. Otherwise, you get the red light if you're going too fast, and it's probably ridiculously low anyway, because these speed limits have got so absurd, especially in London. Although this is France. But I mean, I don't have much to say about it other than it's sort of training people like lab rats. And it's just sort of very French. There's something French about it, or too much state control for me.
It does feel very much like people are being nudged, which is that thing that came in a few years ago, wasn't it? That terminology.
Nudge
you don't
theory.
tell people what to do, you just sort of suggest it to them almost subconsciously.
Yeah.
And of course, it can work very well. I mean, it's like they put cardboard doctors in supermarkets standing near the fruit and veg, because obviously controversially, but they're trying to encourage you to eat those. Things like that. And you kind of go, well, that's no worse than having somebody shout through a loud hailer, eat your veg! But it mounts, doesn't it, gradually? It does mount, and you do feel increasingly that you're in some kind of weird laboratory experiment. You're not actually living in the real world at all.
Yeah, and it escalates and escalates. Eventually, you get a scamdemic.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, there's something similar that happened, really old, in Pennsylvania, where there's a sign on the Pennsylvania Turnpike which says if you go 10 miles over, your fine is $25. If you go 30 miles over, your fine is $50. If you go 100, your fine is... And then it says, how rich do you feel?
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Give me the pay scale.
Yeah.
Back to the Mail now, Lewis, and the latest in Orwellian upgrades. This is flying police insects tracking down motorists.
Yeah, this is more and more of the same. This is horrific. Police drones to spy on motorists from 4 miles away for road safety in England and Wales.
And it's not even just speeding. This is not intended... This is not... I mean, sometimes you get police officers by the side of the road with a speed gun. So you could say, OK, it's similar to that. But this is just... They might pull you over and go, well, you were driving weirdly.
Right.
I don't know, like crossing the white line when you were cornering or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose we've opened a Pandora's box of safetyism, and of course we know it's therefore that driving's more dangerous than a lot of things, quite legitimately. But my problem is who saw the police's behaviour during the COVID era and thought, I know, let's give them drones. I'm just worried about the level of power the police will have.
And what they're going to do with
Even the photographs in the Daily Mail of police operating drones, they had a sort of set Judge Dredd jaw, kind of, they were like operating these things. You can tell it feels a bit paramilitary to them. And, I mean, we may be very much further down the slippery slope or further up the top of it or whatever, compared to America. But the militarisation of American police in the last couple of decades has been extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it only ever goes one direction. Before you know it, everyone is in full black combat gear.
Yeah, we want to go back to Bobby's on the beat, those sticks and the big hats where you couldn't run that fast so it would fall off.
At least if you see a police officer in the distance holding a gun, like a radar radar gun or whatever, you've got a chance to react. Just being vaguely aware that there seems to be some sort of
buzzing
automated crow in the rearview mirror.
It becomes out of that scene in Goodfellas. Remember, he's being followed by the helicopter.
Oh, yeah.
He's thinking, am I being followed by the helicopter?
Nick Mirror now, rather more old-fashioned antisocial behaviour issue has come to light in Australia.
Shocking stuff. It's inside Australia's 40-strong, most inbred family farm as 8 members arrested. So in Australia, it's a relative term. It's the most inbred.
Yeah.
By no means the only inbred Australia family. Look, it's a nation of convicts. It was an experiment. It didn't work out. Because you think I'm joking, but you look into it and it's Betty Colt, who's believed to be Tim and Jude's daughter.
They've changed all the names.
They changed all the names, so they're useless anyway. It's thought to have conceived 12 children together with her brother. And it gets worse and worse. Some of them are sleeping next to buckets of faeces and urine. There was someone in the woods out just feral who was pregnant. That's how they discovered it.
It's not like a regular family, except they all sleep with each other. It's just a complete collapse, a breakdown.
And one thing that shocked me is it's infamously known as Incest Farm. How does it stay in business? I mean, the eggs must be amazing. It's called Incest Farm. It's still going. Am I right? Is this on?
I took the kids to a thing called the Edinburgh Dungeon a few years ago in the heart of Edinburgh, and it's like obviously one of those kind of Disney-fied experiences. But the big thing that they sell there, I think they were called the Sawney Beans. They were like a very incestuous family. They lived in some remote, maybe on an island or into the Highlands anyway. And the King's men were sent to get them, and they were cannibalistic, and one of the men got captured or something. And it was properly. That was the one thing my kids were absolutely terrified of, and we assumed that was all.
What cannibalism?
Cannibal incest, like a big cannibal incest family that were.
So they were eating and having sex.
Yeah, and they would capture people, and extraordinary. But this was like in the 18th century or something. Yeah.
So it's like eating your panties.
Yeah. Anyway. We have, finally, Lewis, the woman who married a ghost. This is definitely not an attention-seeking fruit bat.
Yeah, no, not at all. This woman, Rocky, a woman is married to a ghost on Halloween, now wants an exorcism to get rid of him. So she's saying she married a ghost, and now I got to get rid of this guy. Okay, that's bad enough. But then she says, at the wedding, her ghost husband, and he's a ghost, just couldn't resist winding me up and made an inappropriate comment about Marilyn Monroe looking hot. This is at the wedding.
This is because they have some dead guests, right? Yeah. They have Marilyn and Elvis and
so interesting. Okay,
should have invited Marilyn. Okay. Should not have.
Although,
and it was like she's thinking, "Wow, really? It's our wedding day." The comment completely ruined my evening.
Yeah.
You know what the tragic? Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
The tragic thing is,
you got 10 seconds.
This is the way women are. This is the way women are.
I was going to say the ghost wasn't all bad because he didn't like Philip Schofield.
Okay.
So there is that.
Oh, OK, now I'm 50-50. The show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. The Daily Mail have 19 terror suspects among Channel arrivals. The Telegraph have Biden will push to unite all Stormont parties. The Guardian, junior doctor strikes could run until the general election. The Times have NHS strike will cause a month of disruption. And Joe Biden with his rabbit on both papers. The Express have don't get ill. Doctor strike is going to hurt. And finally, the Star, dope me up, Scotty. Those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much to my guests. As always, Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon. Tune in tomorrow night. We will be joined by Scott Capurro and Leo Kearse. And remember, if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stay tuned. We have the breakfast show just after the break. Otherwise, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'll see you again tomorrow night. Good night.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes & Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
As we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. As Joe Biden heads towards Northern Ireland, we ask, is it time that Stormont, the Assembly, restarted? We look at the Labour attack ads. Are they offensive or are they actually becoming really rather effective? And joining me on Talking Pints, Dr. Lee Rotherham, the man who's setting up the Museum of Brexit charity. But all of that comes after the news from Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you and good evening to you. The top story on GB News tonight. Politicians across Northern Ireland have condemned violent attacks on police in Londonderry. Missiles, including petrol bombs. Sorry about that. Let's begin the news again for you. And the main news tonight is that politicians across Northern Ireland have been condemning the violent attacks on police that have taken place in Londonderry. Missiles, including petrol bombs, were thrown at a PSNI car during an illegal anti-Republican march. The terror threat in the